The gamble that changed everything. The crowd roared inside the Colosseum of Varkal, a massive arena where warriors from across the galaxy fought for glory. The air smelled of blood and burning metal. Thousands of alien spectators, their glowing eyes fixed on the battle below, cheered for their champion, a massive four-armed Zarkal beast that had never lost a fight. Sitting on a throne high above the arena was Lord Cathal, a towering alien with dark blue scales and sharp golden eyes. He was the ruler of this world, feared across the empire. Beside him stood his daughter, Princess Zura, dressed in royal armor. She was no ordinary princess. She was a warrior, trained to fight, and she carried herself with pride. But tonight, something different was happening. In the center of the arena stood Jack Carter, a human. He was no gladiator. He was an outsider, a former soldier who had been captured while traveling through alien space. Jack had been thrown into this death match for the entertainment of the alien crowd. He scanned the roaring stadium. His heart pounded, but his face remained calm. He had survived worse. He had fought in wars back on Earth. But this was something else. Lord Cathal laughed, his voice booming. This human will not last 5 minutes. My champion will crush him. The crowd cheered. The Zarkal beast growled, its 4 massive arms flexing, ready to tear Jack apart. Then Cathal, full of arrogance, made a bold statement. Let us make this fight more interesting. He turned to the nobles beside him, smirking. I will make a wager. If this human somehow wins, I will give him anything he desires. Laughter erupted among the aliens. No one believed Jack could win. Jack clenched his fists. He wasn't interested in prizes, but he knew that refusing to fight meant death. One noble, amused by Cathal's confidence, spoke. Anything, my lord. Cathal smirked. Yes, anything. Then came the twist no one expected. One noble, a sly reptilian alien, whispered loud enough for the crowd to hear, "Even your daughter." Silence fell over the arena. Cathal's golden eyes burned with anger. Princess Zura stiffened, her hand tightening around the hilt of her sword. The noble chuckled. It is only a joke, my lord. We all know the human will die. Cathal sneered. His pride would not allow him to back down. Very well. If this weak human defeats my champion, he may have my daughter. But it will never happen. Zura's eyes widened in shock. Father, this is madness. Silence. Cathal snapped. The human will die, and this will be forgotten. The crowd cheered wildly. To them, this was just another show, another way to see blood spilled in the sand. Jack, standing in the pit, didn't react. He wasn't fighting for a princess. He was fighting to stay alive. The battle began. The Zarkal beast charged, its 4 powerful arms swinging. Jack dodged just in time, feeling the air shift as the massive fists barely missed his head. The ground cracked from the impact. Jack knew he couldn't win with strength. This creature was too strong, too fast. But he had something the beast didn't, human intelligence. He watched the beast's movements. It was aggressive, predictable. It relied on brute force. Jack dodged another attack, rolling behind a fallen weapon from a previous fight, a broken spear. He grabbed it. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. The beast attacked again. Jack jumped aside, using the spear to stab at its exposed side. The creature roared in pain. The crowd gasped. No one had ever wounded the beast before. Zura leaned forward, eyes narrowing. She had fought many warriors, but she had never seen a human fight like this. Jack kept moving. He attacked, then retreated. He was making the beast angry, making it reckless. Then he saw his chance. The beast swung its arms wildly, overextending itself. Jack rolled under its legs and, using all his strength, stabbed the spear straight into its neck. The arena fell into stunned silence. The beast staggered. It let out one final growl before collapsing to the ground, lifeless. Jack stood over the body, panting, covered in sweat and dirt. He had won. The silence was broken by a single voice. "Impossible," Lord Kithel roared, standing from his throne, his face twisted in fury. The crowd erupted into cheers and gasps. No one had expected this outcome. Jack looked up at the ruler, his expression unreadable. He didn't care about rewards. He just wanted freedom. But then he remembered the bet. His eyes moved to Zura. She stood frozen, fists clenched, her expression unreadable. Thal gritted his teeth. He wanted to go back on his word, but his honor would not allow it. He turned to Jack, his voice full of venom. "You have won, human. My daughter belongs to you." Zura's heart pounded in her chest. Rage burned in her veins. She was no man's property. Jack sighed. "I don't want a slave. I just want to leave." Thal laughed bitterly. "It is too late for that. The entire empire has witnessed this. My honor is at stake." Jack knew he had just made a powerful enemy. Zura took a step forward, her fiery eyes locking onto Jack's. "You may have won the fight, human," she said, voice like steel. "But you have not won me." The tension in the air was thick. The entire galaxy would be watching what happened next. Jack had no idea what he had just gotten himself into. The warrior princess rage. The night sky over the Varkal capital was filled with neon lights and towering alien structures. But inside the massive palace of Lord Kithal, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Jack Carter stood in the grand hall, surrounded by alien guards, their glowing weapons pointed at him. He had fought wars, survived brutal battles. But this was a different kind of fight. Across from him, Princess Zura stood with her arms crossed, her sharp, glowing eyes burning with fury. She was no ordinary princess. Her armor gleamed under the golden lights, and her muscles tensed, ready for combat. To her, Jack was not a hero. He was an insult. "I will not be owned by a human," she growled, voice low and dangerous. Jack exhaled. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't wanted to claim anyone. But the moment he won the fight, the entire empire had turned its eyes on him. There was no escaping it. "I don't want a slave," Jack said, his voice calm. "I just want to leave." Lord Kithel slammed his fist on his throne, shaking the ground. "It is too late, human. My honor is at stake. You won by my rules. She belongs to you now." Zura's fingers twitched toward the hilt of her ceremonial blade, her entire body vibrating with rage. "I belong to no one." The guards tensed, waiting for Kithal's order. The ruler's golden eyes gleamed with something dangerous. He wanted Jack to die. But the empire had seen the bet. To go back on his word would be dishonorable. And for a ruler like Kithal, honor was everything. Finally, he smirked. "Very well. She is yours, human. But if you cannot control her, she will kill you." Zura stepped forward, her face a mask of fury. "I challenge you to single combat," she spat. "Right now." The guards gasped. Some looked at Kithal, waiting for his approval. Jack sighed. "Look, I don't." Zura lunged. Jack barely dodged as her blade sliced the air where his throat had been. She was fast, faster than any human he had fought before, but he had been in enough battles to know how to move. She struck again, her attacks precise and deadly. Jack ducked, sidestepped, blocked. He wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to survive. The watching nobles whispered among themselves. This was no ordinary human, but neither was Zura an ordinary warrior. She feinted left, then drove her knee into Jack's ribs. He grunted in pain, stumbling back. "Fight back, coward," she snarled. Jack straightened, rubbing his ribs. He didn't want to hurt her. He didn't even want to be here. But Zura, she wanted blood. She came at him again, this time aiming for his heart. Jack had no choice. He blocked her arm, twisting it just enough to make her lose balance. In a single movement, he grabbed her wrist and turned, using her own momentum against her. A second later, Zura was on the ground, her own blade against her throat. The entire hall went silent. Jack, breathing heavily, locked eyes with her. "You done?" Zura's chest rose and fell rapidly, her mind racing. How? How had a human beaten her? Jack let go and stepped back. "I don't want to fight you. I don't want to be part of your politics. I just want to go home." Zura got up slowly, gripping her blade so tightly her knuckles turned white. But she said nothing. Thal's laughter echoed through the hall. "This is amusing. Perhaps my daughter will learn humility under a human." Jack turned to him, jaw clenched. "And if I say no?" Thal grinned. "Then you will die." Jack sighed. Of course. The choice was clear. Stay and deal with an angry alien princess, or die. Jack ran a hand through his hair, glancing at Zura, who was still glaring at him like she wanted to tear him apart. "Well, princess," he muttered, "looks like we're stuck with each other." Zura's voice was cold as steel. "I will kill you before I ever submit to you, human." Jack smirked. "Yeah, I figured." That was how it began. The next day, Jack woke up in a luxurious chamber, far different from the prison cell he had been thrown in days ago. Soft, alien fabric covered the bed. The air smelled like something sweet and unfamiliar. But the glaring presence of Zura at the door reminded him he wasn't exactly in paradise. She was standing stiffly, arms crossed, watching him with sharp, unreadable eyes. "Good morning, princess," Jack muttered. She didn't move. "You are not my master." Jack sat up. "Never said I was." For a long moment, neither spoke. The tension between them was thick, electric. Then Zura turned sharply and walked out, her voice cold. "Stay out of my way, human." Jack exhaled, rubbing his face. This was going to be one hell of a mess. Meanwhile, Lord Cathal sat in his war chamber, his fingers steepled. His nobles whispered nervously. "My lord," one of them finally said, "are you truly allowing your daughter to remain in the hands of a human?" Phil's golden eyes gleamed. "For now." The noble hesitated. "But your honor." Cathal slammed his fist against the table. "Do you think I will let this stand?" His voice was low, dangerous. The nobles fell silent. Thal leaned back, smirking. "No, my dear advisors," he said, "I will not let this human live for long. He may have won a fight, but he has not won the war." The room filled with dark laughter. The enemy's plan. The sun of Varkal Prime cast a crimson glow over the towering alien city. Hovering ships zipped between the spires of the capital, their engines humming like a distant storm. Inside the vast halls of Lord Cathal's palace, tension was thick as war counselors, advisors, and nobles gathered in secret. At the head of the massive stone table, Cathal sat in silence, his golden eyes gleaming with cold fury. The empire's most powerful nobles stood before him, shifting uncomfortably, waiting for him to speak. Finally, one of them, a reptilian alien with silver scales, cleared his throat. "My lord, you cannot allow this." Thal's claws drummed against the armrest of his throne. "Allow what?" "The human," another noble hissed, his dark red eyes narrowing. "He holds your daughter. The empire watches." Some laugh. Some question your strength. The room fell into murmurs. Some of the nobles looked anxious. The law was clear. Cathal had made a bet. He had lost. To go back on his word would bring dishonor. And yet, none of them believed the warlord would let this stand. Cathal let the murmurs continue for a moment, then raised a hand. Silence fell instantly. "I will not act. Yet." His voice was smooth, calculated. "The empire believes I am humiliated. Let them think so. Let them lower their guard." The silver-scaled noble frowned. "But my lord." Cathal's clawed hand slammed onto the table, leaving deep cracks in the stone. "I will not be questioned." The noble flinched and bowed his head. Cathal leaned forward, his golden eyes burning with something dark. "The human will not live long. He believes he is safe. He believes my daughter is simply a problem for him to handle. He is wrong. The warlord turned his gaze toward a shadowy figure standing at the edge of the room. You know what to do, Kull said. The figure, a tall, masked assassin, gave a slight bow before vanishing into the darkness. Thal leaned back in his throne, a slow smirk forming on his face. Soon, the human would be dead. Meanwhile, Jack Carter stood in the middle of a royal training ground, feeling the weight of a dozen alien stares on him. It had been 2 days since he had won the fight. 2 days since he had been forced into this mess. And for 2 days, Princess Zura had been ignoring him. She was standing on the other side of the training grounds, moving with deadly precision as she practiced sword drills against several sparring droids. She didn't even glance in Jack's direction. Jack exhaled. Yeah, this is going great. Nearby, a smaller alien with green skin and large, blinking eyes approached. He was dressed in a royal servant's uniform. My lord, the servant whispered. Princess Zura, she will not speak to you. Jack scoffed. What gave it away? The servant shifted nervously. This is problematic. The Empire is watching. If the princess does not recognize you, they will think you are weak. Jack frowned. I don't care what they think. The servant hesitated. But you should. The nobles are already whispering. If you do not control the princess, Lord Cathal will use it against you. Jack sighed. Politics. He hated politics. Before he could respond, Zura's voice cut through the air. I do not recognize him because he does not deserve recognition. She sheathed her blade and turned to face him for the first time in 2 days. Her piercing gaze locked onto his. Jack folded his arms. You've got a funny way of saying good morning. Zura strode toward him, stopping just inches away. Let's be clear, human. You may have won a fight, but that means nothing. I am not yours. I will never be yours. Jack studied her for a moment. Anger, defiance, a challenge. He smirked. You sure talk a lot for someone who keeps losing to me. Her fist flew toward his face. Jack barely dodged, grabbing her wrist before she could strike again. The servants gasped. The guard stiffened. For a second, the air crackled with tension. Jack held her gaze. You done? Zura yanked her hand away, stepping back. You will regret ever stepping onto my world. Jack chuckled. You keep saying that. Still waiting. She turned sharply and walked away. Jack sighed. Well, this was going fantastic. That night, the palace was quiet. The halls were dimly lit by soft blue lanterns. Most of the servants and guards had retreated for the night. Jack lay in his chambers, staring at the ceiling. His mind wouldn't shut off. The feeling of being watched, it hadn't left him since he arrived. Then he heard it. A whisper of movement. Too soft for an ordinary person to hear. Jack rolled off the bed in an instant, grabbing the knife he had hidden under the pillow. A shadow lunged from the darkness. Jack barely had time to react. The assassin was fast, inhumanly fast. A curved blade slashed toward his throat. Missing by an inch as Jack ducked and countered with a kick. The assassin flipped back, silent, precise. No wasted movement. No hesitation. Jack exhaled, knife ready. All right, guess we're doing this. The assassin charged. Jack dodged left, barely avoiding a strike to the ribs. He countered with a swift punch, but the assassin twisted, grabbing Jack's wrist and flipping him over. Jack hit the ground hard. The assassin's blade descended toward his heart. A second blade intercepted it. Jack blinked. Zura stood above him, her own sword blocking the assassin's attack. The assassin hissed and leaped back, disappearing into the shadows. For a long moment, silence. Jack sat up, rubbing his ribs. Well, that was fun. Zura turned to him, eyes sharp. You were almost killed. Jack smirked. I noticed. Zura studied him for a long moment. That was no ordinary assassin. Jack nodded. Yeah, Guessing dear old dad isn't playing fair. Zura's jaw tightened. We need to leave. Jack raised an eyebrow. Leave. She turned toward the window, where the city lights shimmered. If they tried once, they will try again. Jack exhaled. He had no love for this place. But running, where would they even go? Still, looking at Zura's expression, this wasn't just about him. Something had changed. She wasn't just trying to get rid of him anymore. She was protecting him. Jack stood, rolling his shoulders. All right, princess. Lead the way. Without another word, they vanished into the night. The unbreakable bond. The twin moons of Varkal Prime shone brightly over the sprawling alien city as Jack Carter and Princess Zura slipped through the narrow streets, avoiding the patrolling guards. The glow of neon signs and the distant hum of alien ships filled the night air, but there was no time to admire the sights. They were being hunted. Jack kept his pace steady, his mind racing. He had been in tough spots before, but this was something else. He had gone from a prisoner to an unwanted owner to an assassination target, all in less than a week. And now, here he was, sneaking through a hostile alien city with the princess of the empire at his side. Keep moving, Zura whispered, glancing over her shoulder. Her sharp eyes scanned every rooftop, every shadow. She had grown up in this city, trained in its dangers, and she knew one thing for sure. Her father would never let them escape alive. Jack gritted his teeth. You got a plan, princess, or are we just running until we hit a dead end? Zura shot him a glare. I had a plan until you started talking. Jack smirked. Even in the middle of an escape, she still had that fire. They ducked into a dark alley as a group of heavily armed Cathal's royal enforcers marched past, their glowing weapons scanning the streets. Zura's fingers tightened around the hilt of her sword. They're hunting us like criminals. Jack exhaled. Yeah, well, we kinda are now. Zura frowned. I was once the heir to this empire. Now I am running like a fugitive because of you. Jack shrugged. Hey, I didn't ask to be part of your royal soap opera. She glared at him, but didn't respond. The truth was, deep down, she knew this wasn't really his fault. Her father had set this in motion. And now he wanted Jack dead. Which meant that for now, Jack was her responsibility. Meanwhile, in the palace, Lord Cathal stood in the war room, staring at the holographic map of the city. His advisors and generals stood in silence, watching their ruler carefully. The human and the princess have vanished, one of the guards reported. No sign of them anywhere in the capital. Thal's claws tightened around the edge of the table. His golden eyes burned with fury. They will not escape, he said coldly. The silver-scaled noble from before hesitated before speaking. My lord, the people are talking. Some believe your daughter has betrayed you. Others believe that perhaps you were wrong to wager her. Silence filled the room. Cathal's expression darkened. I was wrong about nothing. Another noble, a tall, thin alien with piercing violet eyes, stepped forward. And yet, my lord, your daughter did not kill the human when given the chance. A dangerous pause. Thal's fingers curled into a fist. For the first time, a sliver of doubt crept into his mind. Had Zura truly turned against him? Or worse, was she beginning to care for the human? Thal exhaled sharply. Find them, kill the human, and bring my daughter back. Alive. The room filled with murmurs. His meaning was clear. If she resisted, she would no longer be his daughter. Back on the streets, Jack and Zura moved quickly through the underbelly of the city. They had left the glowing towers of the upper districts behind and were now deep in the shadows of the slums. Zura had never been here before. She had grown up in a world of luxury and power, always looking down at these streets. Now she was hiding in them. She didn't like it. Jack, on the other hand, felt right at home. This place reminded him of war zones he had been in before, where survival meant staying quiet, staying hidden, and never trusting anyone. They slipped into a dimly lit underground market, filled with strange creatures from all across the galaxy. The air smelled of alien spices and burning fuel. Merchants whispered from shadowed stalls, selling weapons, stolen goods, and things far worse. "We need supplies," Jack muttered, "and maybe a way off this planet." Zura crossed her arms. "We will not flee like cowards." Jack gave her a look. "Yeah, you got a better idea. Or do you want to march back to Daddy's palace and see what he does to traitors?" Zura's jaw tightened. He was right. As much as she hated to admit it, they needed to run. They approached a grizzled alien smuggler with sharp teeth and a robotic eye. "You want a ship?" the smuggler rasped. "That'll cost you. A lot." Jack leaned forward. "How much?" The smuggler smirked. "Let's just say, more than you can afford, human." Jack sighed. "Of course." But before he could argue, Zura stepped forward. "I am Princess Zura, daughter of Lord Cathal. I will pay with royal credits." The smuggler's eyes widened. Whispers spread through the market. Jack groaned. "Great. Just tell the whole city where we are." The smuggler hesitated, then grinned. "Royal credits, huh? That'll work, if you're still royalty." Zura frowned. "What do you mean?" The smuggler leaned in. "Word on the street is, your daddy just declared you a traitor." Zura's blood ran cold. Jack exhaled. "Well, that's not great." Before anyone could say another word, a dozen bounty hunters burst into the market. Weapons were drawn. Eyes locked onto Zura and Jack. "That's the traitor princess," one of them growled. "The bounty's alive." Another bounty hunter, a massive brute covered in battle scars, grinned at Jack. "And the human? The reward says dead or alive." Jack smirked. "Well, that's not very friendly." Zura drew her blade. "We fight." Jack sighed, cracking his knuckles. "Yeah, figured you'd say that." The bounty hunters charged. Jack and Zura moved as one. Blades clashed. Guns fired. The fight for their survival had truly begun. The princess choice. The underground market erupted into chaos. Blaster fire ripped through the air, sizzling past Jack Carter's ear as he dove behind a metal crate. Zura was already in motion, her blade flashing as she cut down the first bounty hunter who dared to get too close. The smuggler who had offered them a ship vanished into the shadows, unwilling to get caught in the storm. Jack gritted his teeth. Outnumbered, outgunned, out of options, but he had survived worse. "Zura," he called over the noise. "We need to move." Zura pivoted, slicing through another attacker with deadly precision. "Then stop hiding and fight." Jack rolled his eyes. "Oh sure, let me just charge the guys with plasma rifles." "Great idea." He grabbed a fallen weapon from a bounty hunter he had knocked out, then fired 3 quick shots. 2 attackers dropped instantly, while the third ducked behind a market stall. The crowd of criminals and smugglers scattered, not wanting to be caught in the crossfire. More bounty hunters poured into the market, drawn by the sound of battle. Zura and Jack backed toward each other, standing side by side. "They really want us dead, huh?" Jack muttered. Zura clenched her jaw. "No, they want me alive. You, they want dead." Jack smirked. "Good to know." A massive alien brute stepped forward, a mechanical warhammer clutched in his oversized hands. He was at least 7 feet tall, his armor thick and reinforced. "Princess," the brute rumbled, his glowing red eyes locked onto Zura. "You are worth more alive than dead. Come quietly, and you will not be harmed." Jack scoffed. "Yeah, that's believable." The brute ignored him. Zura didn't lower her sword. "I am no one's prisoner." The brute sighed. "Then we do this the hard way." He swung his warhammer. Zura dodged at the last second, but the sheer force of the swing cracked the ground where she had stood. Jack opened fire, but the brute's armor absorbed the shots without a scratch. Jack cursed. "All right, new plan. Run." Zura's blade flashed, striking the brute's exposed knee. He grunted in pain but didn't go down. Instead, he swung again, forcing both Jack and Zura backward. Jack spotted an opening. He reached for a nearby hanging metal cable, grabbed it and swung forward, kicking the brute square in the chest. The giant stumbled back, crashing into a pile of crates. Zura seized the moment, her blade striking again, this time at the gap between his armor plates. The brute let out a strangled growl before collapsing. Jack landed beside her, breathing hard. That was fun. Let's never do it again. Zura didn't respond. Her sharp eyes were scanning the battlefield. More bounty hunters were closing in. Jack followed her gaze. Yeah, I see them. We need an exit. Then, a voice echoed through the market. Enough. The bounty hunters froze. The fighting stopped. A tall, cloaked figure stepped forward. His face was hidden beneath a dark hood, but his presence commanded respect. Jack's grip on his weapon tightened. Friend of yours? Zura's face was unreadable. Not exactly. The figure lowered his hood, revealing sharp, reptilian features. His golden eyes glowed faintly. Princess Zura, he said smoothly, you have caused quite a bit of trouble. Zura tensed. You work for my father. The figure nodded. Indeed. But my orders are flexible. Jack stepped forward. Yeah. What's the deal then? You gonna try and kill me, or are we negotiating? The figure smiled slightly. A bit of both. Jack sighed. Fantastic. Zura's grip on her sword tightened. I will not return. The figure tilted his head. You misunderstand. Lord Cthal has decided your fate. He turned toward the bounty hunters. Kill the human. Bring the princess home. Jack groaned. Oh great, back to plan A. The bounty hunters charge. Zura and Jack fought fiercely, but they were losing ground. There were too many. Jack's weapon clicked empty. A bounty hunter grabbed Zura from behind, locking her in an iron grip. She struggled, but her arms were pinned. Jack turned, just in time to see a blaster aimed at his chest. The bounty hunter pulled the trigger. A blur of movement. A flash of silver. Zura broke free, spinning, her blade slicing through the air. The bounty hunter collapsed before the shot could fire. Jack exhaled. Okay, that was close. Zura didn't move. She was staring at the blood on her blade. The bounty hunters hesitated. Something had changed. Jack frowned. Princess. Zura lifted her gaze. For the first time, there was hesitation in her eyes. The bounty hunters saw it too. She had saved Jack's life. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. The realization hit her like a shockwave. For years, she had lived by the laws of the Empire. She had followed her father's commands. She had believed humans were weak, unworthy, insignificant. But Jack was none of those things. And for the first time in her life, she made a choice. I will not go back, she said softly. The bounty hunters stiffened. Zura lifted her sword. I am no longer my father's daughter. The bounty hunters hesitated, then attacked. But this time, Zura wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting for something more. Jack grinned, grabbing a fallen blaster. Well, it's about time. The battle raged again. Zura fought like a warrior reborn. Jack fought with her, back to back. And together, they tore through the enemy. By the time the dust settled, the market was in ruins. The survivors fled. Jack and Zura stood side by side, breathing heavily. Zura turned to him. We cannot run forever. We need a ship. Jack nodded. Yeah, and I know where we can get one. Zura raised an eyebrow. Do I want to know? Jack smirked. Nope. Zura exhaled. Lead the way, human. Jack chuckled. See, you're already getting nicer. Zura rolled her eyes, but for the first time, she didn't argue. The choice had been made. There was no turning back. The war begins. The stolen starship cut through the darkness of space, its engines humming with stolen energy. The cockpit was small, barely big enough for two, but Jack Carter and Princess Zura weren't focused on comfort. They had bigger problems. Jack sat at the controls, fingers gliding over unfamiliar alien technology. His military training had covered piloting, but flying a stolen enemy vessel, that was a whole new level of reckless. Zura sat beside him, scanning the sensor readings. Her expression was unreadable, but Jack knew she was thinking about what they had just done. They had crossed a line. Zura wasn't just a fugitive anymore. She was a traitor to her father's empire. Jack exhaled. "You're quiet." Zura didn't look at him. "I just betrayed everything I was raised to believe." Jack smirked. "Yeah, well, welcome to my world." She turned sharply, eyes flashing. "This is not a joke, Carter. You do not understand what I have done." Jack kept his hands on the controls. "Oh, I understand just fine, Princess. You turned your back on an empire that was willing to kill its own people, just to prove a point." Zura clenched her fists. "And now they will come for us." Jack nodded. "Yeah, they will." A heavy silence settled between them. Then, the sensors flared red. Jack glanced down. Tell me that's a glitch." Zura's fingers flew over the controls. "It's not." Jack swore. "What is it?" Zura's voice was tight. "My father's fleet." Jack's grip on the controls tightened. "Of course it is." Meanwhile, on Lord Cathal's warship, the flagship of the Varkal Empire loomed in space, a massive warship that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Hundreds of battle cruisers surrounded it, forming an unstoppable blockade. In the war room, Lord Cathal stood motionless, his golden eyes fixed on the holographic display of his daughter's stolen vessel. "The princess has chosen exile," one of his generals reported. "She has sided with the human." Cathal's expression did not change. He had expected this. Another noble, a thin, wiry alien with dark blue scales, stepped forward. "My lord, she cannot escape. Her vessel is surrounded. What are your orders?" Cathal was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Destroy the human." The general hesitated. "And the princess?" Cathal's eyes gleamed. "Bring her back, alive." The order was given. The warships moved. The hunt had begun. Back on the stolen ship, alarms blared as the fleet moved in. Jack gritted his teeth. "Okay, they are really not playing around." Zura's hands flew over the controls. "We cannot outrun them." Jack exhaled. "Yeah, I figured." A voice boomed over the comms. "Princess Zura, you are ordered to stand down. Surrender now, and your life will be spared." Jack smirked. "That's a real generous offer. What do you think, Princess?" Zura's jaw tightened. She leaned forward, pressing the comms button. "I am no longer part of the Empire. If you value your lives, do not follow us." A pause. Then the response came. "So be it." The fleet opened fire. Jack jerked the controls, rolling the ship as plasma blasts streaked past them. The stolen vessel shook violently, alarms blaring. Zura grabbed the side panel. "Carter." I know. Jack snapped, yanking the controls again. "We need a plan, Princess." Zura's eyes flickered across the data screen. "There's an asteroid field nearby. We can lose them in there." Jack groaned. "Asteroid field. That's the worst plan ever." "Do you have a better one?" Jack swore under his breath. "Nope." He dived toward the asteroid field. Inside the asteroid field, the ship weaved between massive chunks of rock, dodging and rolling as enemy fighters pursued them through the deadly maze. Jack clenched his teeth. "This is insane." Zura fired the rear cannons, taking out one of the pursuing ships. "Fly better, human." Jack snorted. "I'm doing my best, Your Highness." More plasma fire erupted behind them, hitting one of the asteroids and sending a shockwave through the field. Jack's fingers flew over the controls. Okay, we need a way out of this before we get flattened. Zura's eyes flickered with determination. There is one. Jack glanced at her. I hate the way you said that. She pointed to the navigation screen. There is an old rebel base hidden in this field. If we can reach it, we may find allies. Jack frowned. Allies? Or more people who want to kill me? Zura smirked. Probably both. Jack exhaled. Of course. With the enemy ships still on their tail, Jack gunned the engines and shot deeper into the asteroid field. The rebel base. The hidden base was ancient, built into the side of a massive asteroid, forgotten by time. As Jack brought the ship in, the doors hissed open. They barely had time to step out before they were surrounded. Weapons aimed at their heads. A tall figure stepped forward, an alien woman with dark silver skin and piercing violet eyes. She studied Zura carefully. Then her gaze shifted to Jack. You are the human, she said, voice unreadable. Jack sighed. Yeah, I get that a lot. The alien woman turned to Zura. And you are the daughter of our greatest enemy. Zura lifted her chin. Not anymore. A tense silence filled the air. Then the alien woman smiled slightly. Then perhaps we have much to discuss. Jack exhaled. Yeah, that's usually how this goes. The war was just beginning. And Jack and Zura had just picked a side. The final battle. The rebel base hummed with energy. Jack Carter stood on a raised platform, watching as alien engineers and human technicians worked frantically to prepare their fleet. The base, hidden deep within the asteroid field, was a relic from a long-forgotten war. Its halls dark, its systems barely functional. But today, it would become something more. Today, it would become the last stand against Lord Cathal's empire. Jack ran a hand through his hair. This is either the best or worst idea we've ever had. Beside him, Princess Zura adjusted the worn battle armor she had borrowed from the rebels. It didn't shine like her royal armor. It didn't carry the insignia of her father's empire. But it felt right. She glanced at Jack. You still have time to leave, human. Jack smirked. And miss all the fun. Zura's lips twitched, almost as if she wanted to smile. The rebel leader, Commander Talarex, stepped forward. She was tall, her silver skin glowing faintly under the dim lights. The enemy fleet is nearly here, she said. Once they find us, there will be no escape. Jack exhaled. Yeah, figured as much. Tall Rex studied him. And yet you stay. Jack shrugged. Not really big on running away. Zura crossed her arms. Neither am I. Tall Rex nodded approvingly. Then let's give them a war. Meanwhile, on Lord Cathal's flagship, the fleet drifted like a silent storm, its massive warships blocking every possible escape route from the asteroid field. Lord Cathal stood at the bridge of his flagship, watching as his generals relayed their final reports. The human and the princess are confirmed inside the rebel base, one of them said. They are preparing for battle. Cathal's golden eyes narrowed. Then they are fools. A holographic map flickered to life before him. It showed the asteroid base, the fleet surrounding it, and the inevitable crushing blow that would come. One of the warlords, a broad-shouldered reptilian, stepped forward. My lord, shall we prepare to destroy the base? Thal's fingers curled into a fist. No, he said slowly. Not yet. The warlord frowned. But my lord the human. Thal's voice was cold. I will deal with the human myself. The war room fell silent. Prepare my personal ship, Cathal ordered. I will end this with my own hands. The battle begins. The first wave of enemy ships descended like predators. Jack sat in the cockpit of a battered rebel fighter, gripping the controls tightly. His hands were steady, his mind focused. Through the cockpit window, he saw the Empire's warships moving into attack formation, their cannons charged, glowing with deadly energy. Jack took a deep breath. All right, princess, he muttered into the comms. Let's see what you've got." From another ship, Zura's voice came through. "Try to keep up, human." Jack smirked. "You wish." The enemy ships opened fire. Jack rolled his fighter, dodging plasma blasts by inches. The entire battlefield exploded into chaos. Fighters twisting through space, weapons flashing, missiles streaking between asteroids. Zura led a squadron of rebel ships, cutting through the enemy ranks with precision. Her movements were fast, ruthless, a warrior unchained. Jack flipped his fighter, blasting 2 enemy ships in rapid succession. "Not bad, Princess." "Focus, Carter," she snapped. "The flagship is moving in." Jack's smirk faded. "Yeah, I see it." From the depths of space, Lord Cathal's warship loomed, its presence suffocating, its weapons ready to wipe out the base. Jack's hands tightened on the controls. "This is it," Zura's voice came through. "This is where we stop running." Jack exhaled. "Yeah. Let's end this." A fight between father and daughter. Deep inside the chaos, a single enemy ship broke away from the fleet, heading straight for the rebel base. Zura saw it instantly. She knew that ship. Her father. Her heart pounded. This was it. She angled her fighter and pushed the engines to their limit. Jack's voice came through the comms. "Zura, what are you doing?" "I'm finishing this." "Wait, damn it, Princess." Jack banked his ship, chasing after her, but Zura was already too far ahead. She wasn't running. She was going to face her father. Inside the rebel base, Lord Cathal's ship landed. The ramp lowered. The air was heavy with tension. Zura stood alone, sword in hand, her heart pounding. Cathal stepped down, his golden eyes unreadable. "Foolish child," he said, "you have disgraced our name." Zura tightened her grip. "I have made my choice." Cathal exhaled. "Then you leave me no choice." In a flash, he drew his own weapon, a massive curved blade that glowed with ancient power. Zura charged. Their blades clashed, sending a shockwave through the air. It was father against daughter, warlord against warrior. The final battle had begun. The end of a reign. Jack landed his fighter outside the base, racing inside just in time to see the duel. Zura fought with everything she had. Faster, sharper, stronger. But Cathal was a monster. He struck harder, heavier, forcing her back with every blow. Jack raised his blaster, but Cathal moved too fast. The warlord disarmed Zura, sending her sword skidding across the floor. He stood over her, weapon raised. "This is mercy," he said. Jack fired. The shot hit Cathal's shoulder. The warlord staggered back, snarling. Zura lunged, grabbing her sword. One final strike. Cathal's blade fell from his hands. For the first time, he looked defeated. Zura stood over him, chest heaving. She could end it. But instead, she lowered her sword. Cathal stared at her. "Why?" "Because I am not like you," she whispered. The warlord exhaled, then collapsed. It was over. A new future. The empire fell that day. With Cathal defeated, his fleet retreated. The rebels had won. Jack sat on a supply crate, watching the sunrise over the asteroid field. It felt strange. Zura approached, standing beside him. "You okay?" he asked. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "I will be." Jack nodded. "So what now?" She looked at him, her gaze softer than it had ever been. "We rebuild. Together." Jack smirked. "Yeah, I guess we do." The war was over. But their journey had only just begun.